What I using? I use Restream. We tried to use something and it's stream on Twitter, I think YouTube and LinkedIn at the same time.
So we're using StreamYard and I'm just double checking.
We have been screwing around with different tools trying to find anything that's seems a bit.
None of them are perfect, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'll share the one. I don't know if you tried this one, but this one was pretty cool, pretty good.
Because you're thinking that there must be good software for this, right? It's such a common need. Like, isn't there just an answer that just works?
But the thing is, like, those platforms, they're not built with interoperability in mind.
They don't like
opposite.
it.
They want to trap you in.
Yeah, exactly.
X especially.
So that's against our vision, you know.
On X, there isn't even a means to download the bloody audio.
Yeah, it's.
Why would you want to download it?
You know, like that's something. You know, I guess the next step in maybe like.
You want to use it somewhere else?
5, 10
Are you
years,
seeing somebody else?
Be able to own your data, you know, in all those platforms. Even own a query or just access. You know, something I love about Google is like, I can activate, you know, like the tracking, you know, but at least I can go and say, what did I do that week? I went in front of that restaurant or that store. It was pretty nice, and I can go and see and check. I have access to that. It can be helpful. But most of the things, they have like thousands of data, but like they don't even share it with you.
Yeah, exactly.
And I find it quite well.
501.
We are live.
Oh,
So we're live. No, I'm ready. No, but that was a good cold intro, right? So we have a very special guest today, but a special format because all of us for Change are live in real life.
In the same room.
In the same room.
Amazing.
And our special guest, do you want to intro?
Yeah.
Sure. So yeah, we have here today with us Redwan Meslem.
Yes,
Meslem, who is the executive director of the EEA, the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, which all of us at this table have had a hand and a part in over the years.
Yes.
Healthy run.
Yes, exactly.
That's right. So yeah,
It's 8 years now.
it
Since
was
2017, yeah.
Wow.
February 2017 was the launch date on the 28th.
And there was pre-work solidly before, at least 3 months, maybe more.
There were meetings I was part of in December and January. There were, I mean, those were the first big meetings,
Right?
You know, with whatever 30, 40 people, crazy amounts. But yeah, like it really started probably at DevCon 2. Really,
It did.
Wow.
It did.
those were the discussions. So that was Shanghai, October.
But there was the kickoff meeting at the JP Morgan office, which was pretty big. And even before, they were the closed door meetings at Microsoft.
Right. So that public launch was February.
It was February.
But December there was an internal like one, and then JP Morgan was in January 2017. But yeah, like a lot of those initial contacts had happened at DevCon 2 in October the previous year.
Well, in the DevCon 2.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So like basically, there was a lot of conversations there about figuring out how to bring on enterprises too, and there were a lot of interested parties, and yeah, like the group of people, which was I think about 6 people that were interested, met at like a Starbucks just off-site, and you know that was sort of the idea formation thing about the.
And then Matt spoke of Newco held a little bar side event as well, which we have some technical issues.
At 5 a.m. So that's not fun.
Oh, okay. Hold on a
I'm
second.
just gonna push. James is gonna tell everybody to go to YouTube.
We have a
Okay.
technical issue, everybody.
I will fix that. Then. Oh, did I? I messed up the Twitter.
You
feed.
did a bad one.
Yeah, I did a bad one. So everyone, please join us on YouTube.
Spaces at 5 a.m. Wow.
Right.
Yes.
Off by 12.
But yeah, Matt spoke, held a little event at one of the bars upstairs, which I went to, and there were various others there. I don't know if you went to that one as well.
I didn't go to that one. So I think the main thing was that. Yeah, so I think the main thing, I'm going to try and fix this right now on Twitter. Live technical support, see if I can resolve it right now. If not, I did choose a.
But also
Yes.
happening in parallel in that, because I was still working for the Ethereum Foundation at the time, was that there was like an enterprise Slack set up there, which was actually started by Vitalik, who afterwards said people kept badgering him about enterprise stuff.
That's right.
So at some point he just dumped them all in a Slack and ran away.
Yeah.
That was the technique. So that was not quite the same group. It was a larger group, but slightly different.
Nuco was part of that group.
Luco was part of that.
Yeah.
Also,
By the way, we should introduce ourselves.
but we should.
About that one.
Yeah,
So,
hi, I'm Bob Wills. I'm head of ecosystem at Stratum Code.
Shane James Lubin, CEO of Block Apps,
Victor Wong.
creators of Strato Mercado.
Yeah, and Victor Wong, Chief Product Officer at Block Apps. So
That's it.
sorry, back.
But yeah, Amos as well. Do you remember them?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Taiwan.
What's that? We should check in on. I haven't thought about Amos until
No.
in like several years until the moment.
So the interesting thing
Yeah.
about what they were doing, so that was like some Taiwan bank consortium thing.
Yep.
But then they did like work on like Chinese cryptography and
Yep.
stuff. Like they've got differing requirements, right?
Yeah.
And the master chain, which was in Russia, that was like a spare bank thing.
Yeah.
Before-
Sberbank was big.
before they
I have
got
a-
sanctioned.
I have a question
But they were
actually
doing,
for you.
They were
It's
doing
interesting.
Russian.
Because you have I was not at the EA at that time, and so it's very interesting for me to what were the hopes and really excitement that you see. You were part of those early conversations. This was
Yeah.
created,
Yeah.
13 I think companies. It was a pretty big event.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, like JP Morgan and everything, all those big
Yeah.
names coming into the ecosystem. And what were the hopes and really like the overall like atmosphere, when the EA was created like 8 years ago?
Yeah, well, I mean, consensus were very critical as well, because they were doing a load of the enterprise like engagement stuff, right? You've got many companies like starting to get interested in, hey, we want to do a pilot, we want to get involved. So consensus were doing a lot of those. So they ended up having a lot of those connections and bringing those in together. But yeah, over those months, you really had like, it got a hell of a lot of momentum.
Yeah,
really quick.
So the observation during DevCon 2 when the idea was hatched was basically that at least at the innovation lab level, a lot of the enterprises were just using and forking their own flavor of Ethereum. They had like hacked their own consensus algorithms and security and
Many
this and that.
gets.
Many guests, indeed. We learned later that like a lot of JP Morgan's forum was initially built by Jeff Wilkie. He had like some kind of,
and that was not announced at the time of DevCon 2. That was still behind the scenes for a few months.
Yeah.
That happened just before the EA started. But yeah, you'd got all of this stuff brewing up. I mean, for years earlier. Like if you think of like Eris DB that became Monax, that became Hyperledger Burrow. So that was a permissioned Ethereum client off POC 5 pre-mainnet.
Yeah.
Mid 2014 of sticking in Tendermint onto an EVM. So yeah, like it was all a bit smished apart. But it was like the time is right for us to work together because we've all got the same needs.
Us too, we had our own client and it got used in a bunch of the consensus consulting engagements at that time. And we started even then kind of tuning it for enterprise. And so I guess the idea was like, well, maybe enterprises won't adopt if there isn't a standard for all of this new stuff that they need that's above and beyond the base.
Well, I
Ethereum
think
clients.
I think it was even beyond that. Like there was just tons of technical work going on in each individual company siloed to get Ethereum to do what they wanted to do in a private way.
Yeah.
So everyone was like bolting on these things. And what came out of those early conversations at DevCon was, wait, like we're all doing similar things. Maybe if we all kind of work together, we could do it faster and get this up faster. And that was all around private Ethereum block.
And I guess also like a marriage between like kind of customers of these things and builders of saying you've got all these kind of startup-y kind of companies that are making Ethereum things, and you've obviously got big demand from really major enterprises to have this, but on that standardization side there was like nothing, and it's like you're all going to get vendor locked like instantly, and it'll all just be arbitrarily different and painful and horrible. So let's try and work out, because well, at some point as well with Quorum, it was kind of like, you know, are we going to like collaboratively do code bases as well? Like, you know, Hyperledger was another piece into this. Is that a few months earlier, I've spent a bunch of time working on C++ relicensing, C++ client to get that to Apache 2, so it could have been contributed into Hyperledger, and we could have like gathered around that. That fucked up. So the EA was kind of a backup, I guess, of like, right, we can't have this grand fusion, but there's enough happening on the Ethereum side that we can at least get all the Ethereum, you know, pieces together. And then, yeah, I guess it went quite quickly from, okay, we don't want to straight compete with Hyperledger. Having a shared code base also kind of like screws up the companies.
Wanted to. So I think, let me, you know, in the spirit of spiciness, I think the enterprise users would have preferred a shared code base,
right?
And they wanted to commoditize any difference among the startups out of existence so that they could never be vendor locked again. They've had these horrific, you know, IBM nightmares, Oracle nightmares over the years, and they're just like, not this time. We're not going to live through this.
I mean, also, you know, you have got that market pressure, right, of Corda coming out, of IBM launching Fabric.
Yes, they were worried it would end up that kind of, you know, those nominally open source but quite proprietary.
So those were both shooting for release in February 2017. So it's that kind of timeline is like, right, we've got to get our shit together to be able to do like an Ethereum product thing that can have some hope against IBM and R3. And
also, you know, DA at that time, I remember one of our prominent enterprise user EA members said, you know, they've got a call with, you know, 300 people on it every week trying to sell into the big banks, let's say.
Right.
And it's funny that all of the, like, Ethereum just survived all of this, more or less not paying any attention. And like, you know, this competition kind of came and went.
Well, I think there was another parallel thing that was happening. At that DevCon, really were like the first, like the kind of enterprise use cases we talk about today. Like, for example, Santander talked about, you know, US dollar on chain, which we all recognize as a stable coin now. And
they had a design for
exactly.
tokenized bank deposit.
But you see, Victor, I think that's a very cool parallel. Like you set the stage pretty well for like, you know, where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And where it started 8 years ago. You mentioned, you know, innovation labs, like starting to contribute to some codes. We've known like the use cases that blockchain and Ethereum can solve for a long time.
Right.
But it's only actually now, and it's been for probably like for the last year that things have been really changing drastically.
Yeah.
And to take, you know, like your words for like when you say innovation lab, it's not innovation labs anymore looking at you know how they implement blockchain in their ecosystem. It's really like
it's actually
executive team that say, hey, we want to plan what is the production, like how we get into market.
Well, thankfully, like they're scared now. So like they better move or else.
I mean, I don't know if it's like there is, you know, there was some interesting talk, you know, like when we were at Sibos, like the Swift conference, like last
year. We should mention that because like you were just at Sibos and you're dealing with like what we think of as TradFi institutional players, and that's, you know, where you have a lot of communication. So like, what were your impressions about where they're at with that? Because that's the other side that we talk about.
The digital asset tokenization is definitely a hot topic. Everyone is looking because they know it's happening, they want to be involved, and it's more. And now, especially like there is less like regulatory,
Sort of interject. The listeners may not know what Sibos is.
Oh yeah.
So Sibos is the big Swift conference. Swift, if you're not familiar, is it's a messaging system that a lot of 11,000 financial institutions around the world. It's actually a co-op. It's a DAO for TradFi. Kudos to Danielle from Consensus who said that to me once.
Yes.
It is a DAO, although it's like, can we buy in now? I feel like
it's a very
I guess
the
restricted.
Yeah, that's
like
restricted.
token gated.
Yeah,
But the
yeah.
token is having probably a bank license.
The London Metal Exchange is like this too. It's like you want to sign up, you got to like buy a bunch of shares and like,
Yes.
then there's an annual fee and whatnot, and you have to like put someone there all the time.
You have to join the trade guild.
Yes.
Yes.
You've got to do your.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so that big conference it's a big mecca of payments, I would say, every year. So you have all the big financial institutions, also like, global financial institution, like, like clearinghouse, settlements, like Euroclear, DTCC, etc., but also like all the banks. And they gather here, and there is a lot of conversation. What is very interesting is actually Sibos and Swift is a very like kind of standard organization, because what they do is like how we make sure like we send messaging across all of us that everyone is sure is going to understand. And so they used to have a different like kind of messaging format, and recently now they're migrating to something new, which is ISO 222.
Okay.
Which is, if you want to go and dive deeper into this is really like how every financial institution want to discuss. They've been working on that spec for a long time, right. And that's how anything that can touch finance, from securities to payment, like they have to be codified.
Yeah, I think it's good to explain. So like most of finance gets cleared through messaging.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, so crypto people are used to like putting a transaction in and then it goes everywhere.
Yes.
It's not really like this.
Oh yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Indeed. That's a very key point, is that the process of what we call delivery versus payment in traditional finance, it's a pretty complex thing, because how you make sure like when you deliver the money has been received, that you receive the asset, that everything has been, and it's a kind of a lot of dance, because you receive message, you send another one, and it's not like how we used to do, where in crypto we submit and it's actually an atomic transaction, which is like just one thing.
Right.
And when the transaction is complete, it's been executed, it's been delivered, and all the parties that is actually, I give you the can. Well, I know you've been giving me like the money exactly. Right. Like where actually there is like a little bit dense. Well, I put the can here, like you see the can that has been moving here, like you send the money, and so the blockchain here offers such efficiencies, because things that like where like like the T+1 or T+2 for some of those different exchange. Now you do it like, well, depending on what chain you're going to deploy, between a second to even like less than that.
Yeah.
And also Swift isn't a payments mechanism, right?
No, it's a messaging.
That's another comment.
So let me, I think, interject with a specific example. I think they're biggest in FX, right?
Yes.
So let's say I've got some USD, I want some euro. And we kind of like agree to a USD euro trade. And so I guess we look up whatever the pair is trading at. And I think it's like, I send my side of the trade with some unique ID to Swift, and you do too. And then Swift like checks if it matches. It charges like $7 either way. If it does match, then it'll like tell us that it matched.
Well, I don't think it's actually exactly this way. It's more a Swift offer a type of envelope and a format of envelope and paper and ink that we know how to use, and how we're supposed to fill up some forms. Then how we trade those forms between different market participants, it's not much, like the people, like they're going to be some, corresponding banking that's going to be like locally taking you cash, and everyone is going to take their share.
So,
but
it's not moving the asset. It's like I have the USD on my bank ledger. You've got the euro on your bank ledger.
Talking to each other in a secure and compliant way, because it's also, he sent that, you have to send like some specific messaging for like compliance, that then I send another one saying, hey, I checked, there is all the information, and
a bunch of like local jurisdiction specific.
Yeah, it's like a lot of
processes and
different handshakes,
stuff.
you know,
Yeah.
for like our
Yeah,
Canadian friends. Like
I
a lot
think
of
the way
handshakes.
someone
Yeah,
described
it's
it to
like a
me,
funny TCP handshake
Yeah.
and more.
it's sort of like what they're doing is tracking the transfers, but no money is actually moving, and then they have
Yeah.
a list of IOUs. So like when I send a Swift transaction from, like, let's say I send $100 to you in France, and I go to my bank, I put in $100, the money doesn't go anywhere. It just
Well, yeah. So
It's
the
bank
I
that's
have to
gonna-
write
The bank, yeah.
USD off my
The
ledger.
net at the end of the day,
Yeah.
that's
Yes,
where
right,
we
the
use something they
euro
call
off,
RTGS that's going to
Yeah.
do like the transfer actually.
Exactly.
It's
So it's like a different messaging.
like
thing.
the
Yeah.
if you research, and I'm not a Swift expert, but I had to
Nor-
learn like
nor
the
am I,
last couple
yeah.
of months. I've done like a little bit more like deep dive, and it's fascinating because there is such a huge dance, between like two transfer of money, because you have the money in your bank account, but then actually central bank money, then you have also like the deposit money.
Yeah.
So like those, like what you call like M0, M1, M2, and so all of that is pretty complex. And then we're just talking about payment here. We're not talking
Right.
about securities or like those other like financial instruments that you can exchange also using blockchain in a very efficient way. But that's using stablecoin, you can make everything super simple. And also one misconception maybe I would love to mention is like like we talked about stablecoin and CBDCs.
yeah.
They actually exactly the same thing.
Right.
It's just in a different context. A CBDC is a stable coin for central bank. And
It's just the issuer.
it's just the issuer is not the same as, we're never going to really touch like CBDCs
Yeah.
because this is like the money, the money of banks, if you say. But almost, I think from a technical level, it's very like almost like a copy paste of the same contract,
Mhm.
the same mechanism. It's not, but we create like a whole different language and terminology for that. But they're actually very similar. And funny fact, those CBDCs, they've been doing, I think the baby needed to grow, like you said, DEFCON 2. So it was a 2-year-old kid, Ethereum. And we were like, hey, come in here. You can manage like the most critical infrastructure of the planet, which is our money and how we do trade. And you can do all of this. And I think like the Ethereum Foundation, I have to give them credit. Like yes, for a long time, they were saying, hey guys, you're not considering the enterprise, everything. But I think they did the right thing because they protected, like that baby. So it could grow and it become like, now we are at an age of, it's more mature. It's more 10 years. It's still like not even a teenager. Like the analogy was like with human is going to take some limits. But we are at a point now where we have a technology and Ethereum is really at capacity to answer all the challenges that are like facing, that we're blocking really institutions to adopt, which is, scalability, privacy, like composability and interoperability, like the 4 points that you had in the ARC paper from Circle. And now we have this, like just last week, ZK Sync announced like up to 15,000 TPS.
Yeah.
And there is some new thing that almost every week going on. So we really like now like the technology when they can look say, well, I need to make sure like this is private. I need to make sure like this is going to be executed in a seamless way. Also like the decentralization, it's more about the way they look at it is more like the vendor lock-in. I would say the best analogy is that you want to make sure the infrastructure you rely on is going to be able to absorb your activity, but also be resilient enough.
Yeah.
This, we still have some work because it's definitely, and I understand the perspective of institution to deploy on a like public infrastructure. At first when Wikipedia showed up, like 25 years ago, something like that, I think. I remember I was at my in my college of my engineering college. I was at the board. And we were talking about having wiki, for doing some articles, and they were like those very academic guys said, "This is unacceptable. It's not." They all had French accent. And this is unacceptable. We're never going to do this. This is anyone can put any information. This is not
To
trustworthy.
be clear, you are French.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
you are allowed to.
Yeah,
You're allowed
I'm
to.
French.
Yeah.
And so, but they were in French. Like they were very like and protecting this. And at that time, I said, well, we cannot trust something that's being built collectively like this. But now we know you have to take a grain of salt, but it's actually much more accepted, like that those are like reliable source of information, and that you can have things that are being built publicly that are actually very resilient.
I mean,
sorry, I was just going to ask, but there's always this gap between what traditional institutions understand about, we all understand what's been capable for a really, really long time, but are there still gaps, or do you think that's been closed now? Is the baby grown up fully, but even when the capability is there, there's still a knowledge gap, I think sometimes,
Well, let me put it this way. There is about, if you combine all the different type of money, $123 trillion of cash around the world.
Right.
300 billions are on chain.
Right.
So the numbers talk for itself. We're very early. So there's people they can, I think we still have a lot of work to do in terms of education.
Yeah.
But by education, I mean really talking from a product perspective. What business problem I can solve for you, how it's going to be done, what is going to be the maintenance after, how you're going to deal with those very specific use cases. And so you can have some teams that already have an understanding, what you can achieve.
Yeah.
But we still need to provide, I think, as an ecosystem, more structuring, who you can work with, what the different vendors, what services they can do, where they can help, what's the type of contract you're going to have after, and really giving that overall perspective of a new entrant,
right.
in the market. And so some of them, they understand very well, and they have already some pretty detailed question, even asking me, Redwan, we need to increase the contract size from 24 to 48 kilobytes, and we have some those Stack Overflow issue well known. So
yeah, the stack depth limit was always a problem.
And so there is some of them, it's this, but then some other ones in this more product, they're going to ask me, okay, why should I go on an L2? What is the L1? What does it mean? And what about those chains? What are the primitives? Explaining well, if you build on any L2s, you actually going to choose maybe one vendor in some way, but you can completely move your asset freely among all the ecosystem. The wallets are going to be the same. A lot of things are going to be equivalent that you don't have to rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are things, you need to explain. Some of them, maybe people, they're going to say, well, what is this? This is just some scammy or something like that. I think you can find all the layers, but now people, they also, they see the potential of what you can do with digital assets, tokenization.
Right.
And for people who are a little bit looking around, I'm very excited to see what's going to happen in the next 6 to 12 months, because Genius Act was signed July 15 or something like this. Clarity Act, I think it's still a little bit ongoing. But so now we and we can also hear that there's really companies from every direction say, okay, how are we going to implement this? The fintech is also moving, so they're the fact they're building their even if they're building the L1, I wish they would do some L2s, and my door will always be open when you want to consider that. There is a pretty great tools that can help, but that's going to push the market and from financial institution to really adopting this. There is an organization like DTCC, the biggest clearinghouse in the world. All the securities in the world basically are being cleared over there. They released an incredible product 4 months ago in April, the Great Collateral, where they have a collection of hundreds of smart contracts that allows you to clear and to make some margin call and collateral management from different jurisdictions, which is a fantastic use case when you see. I'm not a collateral management expert, but I understand the value, how this unlock, you actually have something that you can take from your bank in Japan that you're going to post for something in US because you have a market event. And this is something you would not even imagine before. And now you can do it, and it's compliant. It's actually it's legal, and then that can unlock so much efficiencies. And so that's in the next 12 months, that's going to be huge game changer.
So it sounds like, the lid has been lifted off and there's a ton of demand, but it's walking down the path to supply that demand, that's the part that people are figuring out, right? Like, is that right? Like, is that how you
Very,
think about it?
I think it's such a very transformative technology for how those business operate. There is also how I'm going to make money.
Okay. So there's a fear element to it, right? Like, or
I
at
guess
least
it's like where well now I can have like like
Yeah, I mean-
I'm a PSP provider. Like
Let me ask you this. So in the early days, it felt like there was a focus on more like back office use cases, like
Mhm.
like yeah, how do I move the collateral from like my Japan regional branch to my whatever
Business
Uh,
process improvements.
business process improvements. And I felt that there's eventually became I think this started like 2020, 2021, a shift for big corporations wanting top line use cases. Like, like Nike was the first to like sell a ton of NFTs. And then you're seeing like, I think like the digital asset treasuries are a kind of genius way for a token to like the company doesn't have to IPO. But like there could be a token and there can be something that provides the traditional protections of equity that's publicly traded, and then you could just leave this part sort of where it was, and somehow there's kind of like a merger going on, and this is creating good top line revenue for investment banks and et cetera, et cetera. So like, is your sense that people want the efficiency to compete, or like are they starting to think about it as like a new revenue line, or like transformed revenue line or something?
well, that's a trillion-dollar question right there. I don't have like the answer. What I could say is I see how, like, I think if you look at operational optimization, it's more than that. If you capital flow more seamlessly, you make more money in a financial
Become
institution.
afloat.
So the more you have a flow of your money easy, the more you're going to be able to make some because you're going to unlock some capital improvement. Yet I think, and from like conversation I've seen and where like the still don't have like the golden goose say, hey, that's going to remix a little bit of like all the different people and intermediaries and people working, because if you suddenly have something that is being done a much more efficient way, well, some different intermediates, then they might have like to rethink of the way of doing their business. This is not going to happen from one day to another. What I can say is that because we're going to have those new form of like working with digital assets, that's going to more like being a golden era for like opportunities to build pretty fantastic product. And the people that understand pretty well the ethos of the Ethereum ecosystem and also like blockchain in general, and like some operation in traditional finance, and be able to bridge those two, you're going to be able to bring like some amazing product. And that's what we see a little bit more with convergence, of Aave that doing like a collateral product with Horizon, and unlocking, like you have like Figure, like you have a Spyco, or you have some of like how as we're gonna have like now some assets that are on chain that maybe you can loan and you can collateralize and you can borrow money and you can have some liquidity from in front of those assets while being the actual like. And also like I want to stress, like we say RWAs, but there is a lot of, we need probably to find some new language, because there is like
how I feel about that. I think the RWA term is so broad.
we need
Like
this can be a RWA.
Exactly.
Okay. And I can also take a picture of my my bank account and say, hey, this is a tokenization of my bank account.
Exactly.
And so there is RWAs, but most of them, they actually kind of elaborate IOUs, and not and now we're moving towards more and more having some standards and like things like it's the legal
You want the native issue.
Exactly.
Can.
The token is the legal claim to the asset.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's when this happens, and when like focusing on that, that's going to unlock some pretty incredible things. Because and you connect this with DeFi. Maybe with some, you're gonna always need some form of AML, KYC, and everything like the DeFi, we've known for the last year. They're probably gonna have like 2 of those, but once you connect this, I think that's gonna be pretty incredible.
But how do the institutions feel about, like, obviously as the head of the EA, and you feel strongly about Ethereum too, right? Like the Ethereum ecosystem broadly of L1s, O2s. Like, how do they feel about that? Do they see any other, like we know that Ripple has tried to attract that interest for a really long time. Like, are they kind of sold on Ethereum at this point, or are they still kind of needing to be convinced?
Well, I've heard like several executive at presentation at Sibos saying, hey, like Ethereum is the standard, EVM is the standard. This is the ecosystem. Having said that, and as decision makers, they also want to make sure like they keep the door open and not being locked. So they move progressively. 60% of the stablecoin issuance and is on Ethereum. I think probably 85 to 90% of RWAs. It's the same. Some similar statistics about DeFi activities. That's like electric capital. Like you can see a graph like 3 times more like that than any other ecosystem in terms of like builders and everything. So that's the most radiant and advanced ecosystem in terms of research on every facet. And so that's they know, they recognize. But it doesn't mean that we need to keep educating, to keep working with the EF, for instance. Like they've been incredible work for the last few months of really like packaging the message in a better way that can be more digestible. But there's more like some work, for instance, like the protocol team, they're already addressing so many of the fear, like can have some different digital asset manager in financial institution. But how we bring that message to the right people, package it in a way that it's easy to understand, that's some of the work that is being done as we speak, and that's going to really help, continuing solidifying, that dominance position. But to also answer your question, like some of those institutions, they say, hey, we want to be multi-chain, we want to look at everything, which I think it's absolutely fair, and I would do the same if I were in their shoe. So okay, well, they have some different assessment, criteria, and they say, well, we're going to take this chain, this chain, this chain, this chain, and then we'll see.
I mean,
go back to
beyond EVM. I mean, you've obviously got competition between Ethereum and other EVM flavors. What is the competition outside of that? Because I know there's, you've obviously got competition within that. But
what do you hear?
Institutions doing non-EVM things as well?
Just like Canton is around. I don't know what they're using. Like, do institutions use Solana
DA.
at all? Well, I know, but does DA still have its own like big proprietary-ish stack?
It's not proprietary anymore, but it's
subsource.
Yeah.
Well,
Hedera. Is no one using Hedera?
What do you hear? Competitive.
Canton is probably the most advanced in terms of like connection with the rest of the ecosystem, and I would say like not the rest, but the traditional finance. They have like a way it's structured, though it's something I still don't completely understand. If you can be a validators, have some tokens that they're going to exchange on some private market, and so some form of revenue, and then they have already like that. It's a consortium, like it's a quorum V2, I would say, and they've been able to bring into their governance like a lot of the different financial institutions. So, but once again, and if you ask me, and I'm biased, of course, but this is an ecosystem. Like, yes, the Canton code is open source and everything, but well, you're still building on a technology that is not super like very like. There's not a lot of people, like when you're going to be like the CIO of a company and you need to have some maintenance or something. It's going to be what, like 20 guys in a country that can do some work on this. And so that's the way I look at this. I think like Solana, I'm not sure with the institution.
I don't hear anything institutional from Solana, but it seems popular nonetheless.
Oddly enough, like Ripple has been trying to do this for a long time, but I don't hear them brought up in the conversation that much anymore.
Nobody ever used Ripple. Apart from
I've been in blockchain for
Spicy
like,
take.
not as long as you guys, but it's really since 2019. And I spent like almost 4 years at ChainSafe,
Yeah.
very authentic, like, builders, like crypto native protocol development. And I've been to conferences, with the engineers, and I asked them in a very candid way, I say, have you ever built on Ripple or on some other, and I had conversation with the engineers at ChainSafe, and we had some polls and we had some conversation in the Slack, I remember, and no one really came up with some very
it's marketing. They've just got an infinite war chest for marketing
Well,
and lobbying.
I mean, at one point, one of the Siboses I went to years and years ago, right? Ripple was supposed to have a huge booth, and so, like, I guess Swift decided, oh, they're too much of a competitor, so they kicked them out. And this was in
They were
August.
calling themselves the Swift Killer.
Right.
For a while.
They decided, like Ripple decided, you know what? We're just going to run our own conference in parallel with Sibos. They put on a parallel conference, and Vitalik was speaking at their conference. And I remember
At the Ripple one?
At the Ripple one. And I remember,
Well, he
like,
nearly interned there.
they had buses in front of the Sibos conference, like taking you to where their new conference was. And I remember like seeing Vitalik like run across, like looking for this conference, because like it was in this new place, and like we were all trying to. I remember like waving him like over here, Vitalik, over there. Like, so it's
Corda. People still using Corda?
R3, right?
Yeah.
Like it's been bought out by Solana. Corda is Solana now.
I don't think they
Really?
I don't think they would. I don't think they would approach it in those terms. I think it's a partnership and a collaboration.
Yeah.
Yes,
That we're not absolutely they weren't bought by.
not bought out, but yes, but I mean,
No.
I will say
Anyone
we're
using Fabric still? Fabric? Anyone?
Well, yes.
Fabric.
Behind the scene, like the Fabric is still like very present in I think central banks and those type of more very close environment. If even I'm not sure if BIS, Bank of International Settlement, which is for those who don't know, it's like 40 different international banks that work together to optimize, I would say, like the collaboration and exchange. But they had like a project Agora that they started a couple of like months ago.
Yeah.
Those are like institutions where it takes like much longer time, I think.
But
to
they're
do.
starting in new projects.
That's not the same Agora. But I would imagine like maybe they were having some POCs before. I know some few central banks, they run, like using Fabric, like
it's probably
next to
like
Hyperledger and Fabric, like they.
probably like the asbestos, isn't it? It's just going to take years to work that out.
you need people in suits to like.
Hazmat
suits.
suits.
Yeah.
I will say, I think we're almost at 45 minutes. Redwan's been very generous with his time. I think we asked. Do you have any final thoughts you want to share with
Well, actually,
everyone?
on Fabric, I know like IBM is working on a bridge between Fabric to it's called Fabric X
Okay.
to Ethereum. So
Well,
you can
one
see
of
that
their-
online.
Right. Well, one of their big sell at New York Blockchain Week in 2018 was their EVM integration. Right. That they did the
Yeah, they
Bam,
did a channel or
bam,
something.
Fab3.js or whatever. That they did do this munching together, and that was using Burrow, right? Because you've got the
I
Burrow.
think I remember this.
Burrow went
remember
into
this, yeah.
Hyperledger before Bedu, and that was the continuation of that ErisDB, Monax, on you went. That was never mainnet compatible though, but there was that Go EVM within Hyperledger under the same licensing, so they could wham those together. And I mean that's 7 years ago. So yeah, I'm sure that they need to have an even better EVM story these days.
So if to answer your question, and like EVM and Ethereum is really the standard, as everyone that's what they're saying. Like you go through like some different stages. You have like the chief innovation officer of like Swift and some different institutions.
They understand that. Right?
They're like
that's
they
what
understand, and that's what
Yeah.
they say. I was really everywhere I went on all those different panels, we had a panel at 8:30 on like permissionless versus private network. It was hosted by Applied Blockchain, a member of the EA. There was like Citibank, Linux Foundation, Decentralized Trust, UBEX, and me. And it was we were full. There were people standing up, and there was the Swift innovation officers, some other banks that came to talk to us. So people they understand Ethereum is definitely seen as like the standard and the place where you want to build, because that's where you have access to the most liquidity, the most users, the most vibrant DeFi ecosystem, which is something that is getting closer, I think, and say, well, maybe there is some way to make some money here. I don't know exactly how, but there is some potential. So I think the future is very bright for us.
And I think that ties very nicely back to the start of the conversation and about the thoughts for the EA and so on, was something that Jeremy Miller said in the opening speech on the opening day was, think of this as being like a router, an internet intranet. There's no reason why suitably modular code bases shouldn't serve all of these use cases, public and private. And what we did not want to happen, and I remember being driven very much by this, was saying, let's not have arbitrarily different code bases for these different things, because we can't be asked having that conversation and making the effort to try and bridge those worlds. And that was really coming from that fabric and Corda competition of these big enterprises basically sort of being told, you Ethereum guys have got to get your stuff together, or we're going to get mandated to use this other stuff. And it doesn't matter what you want. It's like the spending will have been spent, and it's never coming back. So I think to my mind, it's like really superb to see where we are. It's like, that's what we were thinking. That was kind of the goal, right? Is that this can be a standard for everything. And yeah, things were like immature, and maybe, you needed to be doing consortium chains, and you needed to take these baby steps on the way and wait for the tech to catch up. But really, it's like, this can be the answer for everything. So I think that's where we are.
And we're talking more and more, like Ethereum Foundation has done an incredible job. They have like an enterprise team also, like they're having conversation with everyone, and they can have they have access to all the different leaders. And this has been pretty fantastic. And so the more we discuss about this and say, hey, there is no CEO of Ethereum. It's not a private company. There is no CEO of internet, as
they all use Linux, right?
So that's something that is like catching up more and more. And the more, we're going, that's also like the mission that what we do at EA, like going to have those conversations, doing events, like bringing some people together from like a few events that we do, when we try to really mix like DeFi, traditional finance, institution, like pure Ethereum players, and have all those people talking together. That's how we make that, moving forward.
Well, on that note, I think we'll wrap up. But where can people find more about you and EA in general?
Well, the website of we are present on all the social media. Like the website is like EastAlliance.org. We have the same handle like on Twitter, on LinkedIn. I'm also on LinkedIn and on Twitter, and try to post, like often some few articles and some insights. And there's some more work that I'm going to put like together in a couple of weeks around RWAs and everything. And also always looking for some like large institution that would like to collaborate on some writing pieces. So we can really put some like thought leadership and helping, explaining what's being done. And I think bridging, like the Ethereum world with the traditional finance is also like something that we're pretty excited to do in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We'll be also in Singapore FinTech Week next month, in DEFCON in Argentina, and we'll be also in Abu Dhabi for Finance Week.
Cool. And Bob, where can people find you?
So I'm on Twitter, same as my name, Bob Somerville, with a WILL, not Vil, not Somerville.
Not the German spelling of
no.
Yeah. Karen?
K. James Lubin on X, YouTube, etc.
And you can find me on X at Vic, VIC, the number 4, WONG. Thank you for joining us for our first in-person
Yeah.
roundtable.
Yeah.
Thanks again. It's awesome.
Thanks for coming.
Take care.